It's pretty unconventional for VCs to have full-time designers. A lot of the focus of early stage company building is hiring, where you're just trying to tell the best story to investors, to your first customers, to get them to trust you, to the smart engineers and designers and builders, to try to convince them to join the company. So we're trying to solve that cold start problem.
Hey, Luke, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure. Good to talk to you.
How about we start at just, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I am Luke Bugbee. I'm the head of design at 8VC. We're an early stage focused venture capital firm. We have $6 billion under management or so, and we invest in a wide range of companies. So we have various theses. So we have logistics, defense, IT enterprise, healthcare, biology, and some other things in between. So we're pretty wide focused, but in terms of like the financing stage, we focus on the pre-seed to Series A range for the most part. Sometimes we do Series B, but not super often. But I run our design org for the firm.
Amazing. And what was your journey into design and to 8VC in the first place?
Well, it's pretty unconventional for VCs to have full-time designers. I think the most common role is a designer in residence that some VCs had for a long time. But 8VC was started by Joe Lonsdale, who's one of the Palantir founders. And after Palantir, Joe also co-founded OpenGov and Adapar and a few other companies. And I think from Joe, he saw just like a serious velocity differential between companies that focus on design and those that use it as an afterthought or a way to paint kind of a pretty picture over kind of an ugly beast. So Joe has always really prioritized design top down. So my journey into the firm was, when I was still in college, I worked at two startups that Joe Lonsdale had founded and invested in. So OpenGov, he was a co-founder of OpenGov. That was kind of like my first foray into Silicon Valley. And then after OpenGov, I worked at another GovTech startup, which Joe Angel invested in. And after when I graduated college, I'd worked at two of these startups, and I came to the firm and was like, "Hey, I worked at two of your portfolio companies. Are there any others looking for full-time designers? I'm loving this. I want to kind of keep up this work I'm doing." And the firm at that time was just getting started. It was, I think, 4 months after ABC began 9 years ago. And the firm was like, well, hey, we could use a designer here. And for me, we could talk a little bit more about this later, but I honestly was really eager to work at a startup and build things from scratch and build products and kind of live the life cycle of a startup. And wasn't super thrilled about joining a venture capital firm full time because I didn't really know what that would entail. If that was, we're going to be designing spreadsheets or pitch decks or blog graphics for the rest of my life. But I had just gotten married and I was like, hey, I need a full-time job and this is a good, stable job. But soon after I joined the firm, the role evolved quite a bit to be much more kind of like build-centric, lots of UI branding, kind of like running around doing different things for different types of companies, and just really was creatively stimulating for me. And so I've managed to kind of craft my dream role here over the past 9 years. But that's a very long-winded way of how I landed at the firm.
Sounds incredible. Sounds like a great journey. I love how, I think most people listening will be like, I would love to work at an 8VC. And you're like, all right, I need a job here, but it's okay.
I think it's gotten more. I think VCs, the brand of VC has kind of evolved over time. I think also just I'm more of a build archetype. Like I want to be in the trenches with startups, and I wasn't sure if I would be able to do that at a VC because the common VC tropes are we just send emails, let me know how I can be helpful, and then offer no help once the check is written. That was kind of my impression of VC until that point. But once I joined, I was like, oh, we're actually going to be starting companies from scratch, and this is awesome.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more about that evolution from you mentioned from the get-go until like how you built out, what is it, a 6-person team today, I think?
Well, I guess before talking about the design org, we started this program at the firm called the Build Program, which essentially we realized that to be good investors, you also need to be good entrepreneurs and builders, and it kind of feeds into itself. The better builders are better investors, and the better investors are better builders, and so forth. So after Joe's Palantir OpenGov days, and the firm started, Joe was involved in founding a couple more companies, kind of unofficially. So Affinity was one of those. Affinity is kind of like this big CRM that many VCs use at this point. And then a GovTech company called Esper, and several others that, we were starting these companies while running, over here, we were running the VC business. We decided to kind of rope them together officially into this build program where every year we found 2, 3, 4 companies and these conceptual gaps that we're able to uncover as people are pitching us. And so that's kind of where I found my footing. I was like, hey, I love all types of design and all types of companies. I'm just very interested in all different types of companies. And so, I want to be involved in all these companies in various ways, not just doing product design here and branding over there, but, just kind of run around with my hair on fire. But because of that, we've kind of realized we needed, variously talented people. So we have a full-time graphic designer now, just because that was a huge need. We do a lot of branding for companies that we get off the ground. We have a product designer who's focused on 3D and web as well. So he's kind of like generally focused as well. We have another guy on the team who's more of a generalist and he focuses on talent. And then 2 3D artists. So we have 6 people on the team. And we all kind of work in lockstep. We've all worked together for a very long time. I think just the 3D guys have been around for 6 years or something like that. So we have like quite a bit of longevity. I think for all of us, it's really our dream jobs, and we've built a good friendship. So
sounds like you built a great team, a great unit. How do you evangelize the importance of design to technical founders who don't naturally prioritize it?
So it is a benefit. This isn't true of many other VCs. I have other friends in design roles at other VCs, but there really is a top-down mandate from the partners at EPC that, if a company looks hideous and we get a pitch deck where like the subject matter or the meat of the business looks good, but it just looks hideous, the partners will be the one to push the founder towards design. They'll say, hey, you need to go talk to Luke. We'll, either hire an agency, or maybe if we have capacity with our internal design team, we could handle a rebrand or handle your materials for you. So having that support top down certainly helps, that I really don't need to fight for a seat at the table. But on the off chance that, you do run into those people who don't seem to prioritize it, naturally, you could clearly point to instances where design does seem to have moved the needle. Essentially for us, we're early stage investors. So a lot of the focus of early stage company building is hiring, where you're just trying to tell the best story to investors, to your first customers, to get them to trust you, to the smart engineers and designers and builders, to try to convince them to join the company, because then you're going to build the actual thing that's going to make the money. And that's really a storytelling issue. So just by pointing that out to a founder that like, hey, if you guys look amazing, you're going to have really smart people that want to work at an amazing looking company. Like any smart engineer is going to want to be able to brag around the Thanksgiving table that they work at this, really, really cool startup. And then, so we're trying to solve that cold start problem of how do we tell your first story? Because then by telling that story, you'll be able to build the thing, and then the thing will tell its own story later. I think that's a pretty compelling message to most founders. And I think there's enough success stories now of well-designed companies. I mean, you have Palantir and Anduril, which are both, have set a very high bar on the design front in very non-design oriented industries. And before that, there was SpaceX. which did the same for kind of space exploration. They've taken a special interest in making sure the uniforms and the spacecraft are all, as we might imagine, futuristic uniforms and spacecraft looking, right? They don't just, it's not about pure utility, it's about beauty as well. I don't think that's a hard message to sell, honestly. And if someone's having a hard time getting it, it's really not, it depends, where they are in the portfolio, but it really is like not worth my time to really like meet over and over again with someone who is not getting it. I can just have a partner email them if I need to, or they'll realize it eventually. Hopefully it's not too late, but then they'll come knocking. That's happened a few times too.
We've all been there, I think.
It's like, oh, you don't need a brand? Okay, good luck. And then 6 months later, hey, I know you were telling me to get a good brand. Can we talk now? Okay.
Comes around. I know that, in venture, you are focused on returns, right? You want these companies to scale. How do you think about ROI as it relates to brand building, and any examples that you might have? I know we've talked a little bit before, and you called out, we talked about hiring just now, valuation, et cetera. Doesn't need to be specific metrics, but just kind of at a highest level, what is that business case?
Again, we're so early on, or we're involved so early with these companies that our focus is on building the foundation of a company and making it a magnet for really smart people. And that's what Palantir did, is they built this reputation of Palantir is where the smartest people go to work. They pay the top salary for the best people because the best people do the best work. And because we're involved at that stage, I view most of my metrics being just kind of like, how effectively is this company going to attract people? Some specific examples are, Saronic would be a great one. Saronic is one of the defense companies that was incubated within APC. So Dino is this special forces Navy SEAL who, spent maybe a year with us or so and pretty much decided to launch this company, Saronic, focused on autonomous surface vessels for the Navy. So they're building essentially drones that float on the water and drive themselves and can do any number of things. But Dino, from square one, he was like, hey, we're going to build a generational defense company, hardware manufacturer, build software to handle autonomy. Like, we're building a real business. This is not like a garage stage company. And from square one, Dino really prioritized brand. Even when he was still at the firm, he was like, hey, we need a kick butt brand. We're going to take this brand into the Pentagon literally within the first 4 months of the company. We're going to meet with senators and everything. And this needs to look like it's existed for a long time and that we're grown-ups. This is not like, a Stanford college student spin out or anything. And so we did. We did that initial brand. They launched with it. They took those meetings. They raised their Series A. And then Dino, again, came back and was like, hey, we need to scale this brand. And because we're gonna grow at lightning speed. We connected them with a number of agencies. They ended up signing with an agency for, they paid, top dollar to get a really good rebrand done. And sure enough, Saronic has grown from launching to, I think they're about a $4 billion valuation now in 18 months or something, maybe 2 years. Just the speed is just insane. But what's funny is because I built their first website and did the first brand, I was CC'd on all the emails that would come through the website just to make sure that like, hey, Zapier is working. So slowly I would see one email come through. Hey, I'm kind of interested in working at Saronic. The next day, 10 emails come through. Hey, I'm interested in working at Saronic. And like click on these profiles, and these are like insanely smart people at MIT trying to drop out of MIT to like join this. I don't know what Saronic was doing to like generate this interest. And it just continued. The next day, like 20 emails would come in and I'd click through all of them. Many of them were hired too. And I run into them at the Saronic office. But that's like a very good metric, is our smart people clamoring over each other to work there? If so, then we've done our job, because they'll build something valuable once they all get into the room and start drinking some energy drinks. And obviously the revenue comes later, but like by the time they're building revenue and building sales team and SDRs and all that, we're actually really not that involved at that point, other than just in an advisory position,
Do you have any thoughts on impact on valuation?
I think it does impact valuation quite a bit. I think you and I spoke before about how, so ABC, the fund's been around about 9 years now, and a VC fund tends to last like 8 to 12 years, like within that range. It's kind of expanding more and more, but essentially you're expected to send the money back to your LPs around that window. So people are starting to think about exits and so forth around 8 years. So our first fund has all these companies that are all in that stage. We're trying to figure out, okay, who are we? What are we going to do? Are we going to get acquired? Are we going to go public? Are we going to merge with someone? And so those early stage companies are actually starting to reach out and ask for more later stage brand advice and or rebrands or referrals to agencies. And in that case, I don't have the data in front of me to back this up, but if we can do a kind of like a last minute rebrand on a very ugly company that's built something valuable, and that rebrand can increase valuation and tack on a couple million or 10% of the acquisition cost or the M&A offer rather, you've paid back your entire brand cost and then some many times over by doing that. And some founders can't quite understand that. They just view it as like, this is expensive. We could hire a full-time team for a year with this price. But like, if you're going to raise the valuation that you get offered by $10 million, of course you should pay for like a really nice brand. Granted, you don't want to just be like signing up for rebrands willy-nilly for no reason. Like, there should be rationale behind every decision and why your current brand isn't working, what needs to change, and what you're trying to achieve. But if you are going to go to seek to get acquired or to merge with someone, it's worth looking good. This is common sense. Anyone who sells a house, like, of course you're going to go like paint the outside of the house, and you're going to like blow insulation in the attic, and like fix up the stepping stones. Like, of course. And then like it's worth spending $1,000 doing that if someone's going to offer you $10,000 more for your house, right? Like the payback is very clear.
I mean, we talked about the earliest stages that you typically engage in. We talked a little bit about pre-exit. You referenced different inflection points and reasons to engage in a brand. What are you seeing mostly across the life cycle of a startup, and why they would engage in sort of brand development or rebranding efforts?
I don't know if this is just a nature of our portfolio. I don't know if this is industry wide, but it seems like everyone wants to launch at this point with a good brand and put their best foot forward and kind of have like a big debut. I don't know, like almost like a mini Apple launch, or like a trailer dropping for a new Hollywood hit or something. It seems like that's the norm now. Whereas before it was like, we'd have one company amidst the portfolio that we're going to like put all this focus in, making sure this announcement is ready. But now, I mean, we probably have 4 or 5 companies in parallel at all times that we're generating assets for, videos for, building a website for. I think there's just a more widespread understanding that hey, we should put our best foot forward when we first announce. You only have one opportunity to make a first impression, so let's not squander this. So now you're seeing these like very high production kind of like announcing this XYZ new company. That didn't happen before as often, and now it seems to be the norm. It's to yours and my benefit in that, like, I would love for every company to look super awesome the moment they drop, but it's also more competitive because now, before, if you were the one company that had the sexy reveal video, like, it would generate a lot of interest. But now like 3 of them drop on my Twitter timeline a day, so you're really competing against all these other companies. Obviously, at the end of the day, whatever interest you generate from those hype videos is neither here nor there if you can't follow it up and actually design a real product and a brand with longevity. So we're not just in the business of hype generation, but we have 2 product designers on our team. We're deep in the weeds with the founders. After we brand a company, we're in their UI designing their actual products. With Saronic, we actually designed the first version of their actual boat. We had their CAD files. We're in there generating the real thing. So it's important to do that stuff too.
That's incredible. I had no idea you were that deep in these businesses to the point where you're working on the actual product, physical products at times too.
Yeah, that's so fun. I mean, we're doing more and more hardware these days. And I know you guys just wrapped up Bedrock, but that stuff is just so much fun. When you can go and see your physical thing out in the wild. Granted, with Saronic, what they're building now looks nothing like what we originally designed for Dino. But, there's, Epirus is another big defense company that we did the first brand for. And now, this logo we did is emblazoned on the side of these massive kind of like anti-drone laser microwave weapons. It's cool to like be there in person and see things like physically in front of you,
I will never forget the time that I sat inside of an autonomous excavator. Yes, I completely agree. I think that is a memory etched in my brain forever.
Did that feel super vulnerable, this thing moving around without, I mean, you're just kind of you're like a meat puppet inside a machine.
Those machines are incredible, are absolutely incredible. I guess you could equate it to being in a Waymo. It's like, yeah, at first it's a little bit scary, and then you realize that actually this thing is safer than even myself driving. So, and that's especially true in excavators. I think it was probably safer not for me to be driving too. I know you mentioned kind of your specific industries that you're focused on. I know you do a lot of defense tech, industrial technology, AI. What kind of unique branding challenges do you think these companies have in addition to the competitiveness of the market at launch sounds like one of them, but yeah, anything else that you think are specific to those sectors?
I think that there's a natural gravity that comes from when you have like a clear front runner in design in an industry for all the other folks to kind of like gravitate toward that brand. So you have it in Palantir for like, big data, tech defense, kind of number crunching company that kind of defines a bunch of companies that look just like Palantir. And then Anduril as well. I mean, there's a lot of defense hardware that's being spun up right now. And Jen over at Anduril has just done such a good job defining, American defense hardware design that everyone comes out looking like Anduril. And I've talked to her about this, but on one hand, you can be competitive about it and a little bit sour about it. On the other hand, I mean, she deserves a lot of credit, and Anduril does, and the rest of the design team over there, because there's just so many companies that are launching looking just like Anduril. And I think it's cool because it kind of defines the design language for American defense at large. When that happens, specifically in that industry, is that, when you encounter American defense hardware on the battlefield in the future, it's going to look very American because they all kind of look similar. I think that's actually an ideal. But you see it in other industries as well. We have some healthcare companies that the APC design team is only handling, a subset of the companies within the broader portfolio, which is 400 plus companies. But inevitably, any branding project we do a full survey and discovery of the industry of what is everyone else doing in this space? What looks good? What looks horrible? What are some, sand traps we want to avoid? I mean, you see in biotech and healthcare, this kind of like medicinal blue that's used throughout every single brand, this illustrative style that's used everywhere. And so we try to avoid those common tropes. Thankfully, you occasionally get a really like courageous founder that believes that like, hey, no, like amidst everyone around us, we want to be super different. We're doing a really cool health insurance company right now where the founder was like, I want to be liquid death for healthcare insurance, just like totally different from everyone else. And so we kept like generating all these brand options, and like we'd have that risky option. I mean, you know how this goes. You have your span of things. The risky one you think they're going to say no to. And every time Alex has chosen the most extreme version, and we're like, this is so much fun. I mean, now we're like animating all these like, animated graphics. We have like a character for one of the logos that moves, and it's just a ton of fun. And another place where this happened was Resilience. This is a big biomanufacturing company. Resilience.com is their URL. They're another one where we incubated it along with another biotech firm, Arch Ventures. It's Bob Nelson's firm. And in the midst of COVID, there was, obviously a huge shortage in our ability to make really complex medicines. Here, I mean, we kind of have offshored that whole business. So we decided we're going to raise a bunch of money, buy a bunch of factories that exist already, kind of turn them around with first principles that we've learned from Silicon Valley, and build all these efficiencies into the business. And so working with Rahul, who's the founding CEO there, Rahul was also like, look, CDMOs are very contract design and manufacturing organizations, what that stands for. CDMOs are really boring. I mean, like they're like the invisible person behind medicines. Like no one knows what the brands look like, and the ones that do exist all look like the exact same company. So again, with Rahul, it was awesome just to see him recognize the like homogeneous industry brand landscape and intentionally want to skirt around it. So we ended up doing this like extreme brutalistic brand for resilience that's like all black and white, like a very like abstract logo that's very like architectural, very sharp and cutting edge, and it's like a very badass brand for like a CDMO. And I'm not going to take any credit for it. I'll take a tiny bit, but they grew to a $9 billion valuation in 24 months or something like that, which is just, outrageous execution. They raised all this money, bought all these factories, turned out all these medicines, built all these partnerships, used those to raise more money, to buy more factories, and the flywheel, just kicked off. It's really, really cool.
I think the one thing to point it back to that I think was interesting, where you started that talking about how Anduril and everybody kind of following the same design language, or at least inspiration. However, all of these examples that you just shared, whether it was the insurance company, the CDMO, you're talking about taking bold risks, kind of branch out from the expected, and how that helped them be successful, which I think is rare, as you said, but could be immensely valuable, especially again in these increasingly competitive categories.
I think there is another shift that's happening too, where there's more of a tolerance for extremely different players. Before, SpaceX and Palantir and worked really hard to kind of change the government's opinion on working with private companies. You probably had to be around for a long time and look like all the other people to be taken seriously. I think it's true of all the other companies too, or industries, where I think there's just, you don't have like the snobbery you used to have of like, hey, you have to. The reason I say this is because when I was at OpenGov, we worked with governments building financial platforms to run government budgets and so forth. And there was a sense that we didn't want to over design things. I did a lot of the Marcom design there. We did, like, if we went too sexy and too extreme, this is being presented to like city managers at like a little, 20,000 person town, like you're going to turn them off and you're going to look like, hey, we're very illegitimate, like young bucks who don't really know what we're talking about. So, but I don't think that's the environment we work in anymore. I think everyone's like, you're not going to turn people off the way you used to by being over designed.
For sure. On that note, like what lessons learned have you had over the almost decade you've been working with all of these companies, both from your perspective and building the brands, but also do you think from the founder's perspective?
I have my own personal biases that I think align with at least some of our partners, which is I do think beauty is important in branding. I'm very like anti. I'm gonna get in trouble for this, but I'm very like anti design thinking exercises. That. Essentially, if you go through a design program at a college, they teach you all these like processes you have to go through. And hey, we have to do all these user generative interviews and put a bunch of Post-its on the wall and spend 3 months doing it. And I think for me, my entire career is early stage company building. And I've very much taken, I've just seen the importance of shipping the thing and building the actual thing and launching. And it's okay. Like done is so much better than perfect, because you'll never get to perfect. And by the time you do, the whole company is pivoted 3 times and there's a new CEO there. So you really don't have the time available to sit around and talk to, every industry player. It's so much better to just like trust your gut, launch a brand, And then you can always rebrand later once you do know what you're building. It's okay to do that. I think the other part, and I mentioned earlier, is just beauty. Joe Lonsdale, our general partner, is like hardcore into classical design language, even like oil paintings and Romanesque, Greco-Roman art and columns and Corinthian columns and so forth. I'm actually really into that stuff too, is I just love looking at old masters. I prefer, National Museum of Art over MoMA, because I just love the old masters. A lot of the Renaissance artists and painters, and, the Renaissance was kicked off in part by this renewed interest of going down, to Rome and seeing what the old masters did. And someone found a copy of Vitruvius's Principles of Architecture. I think it's like four laws of architecture or something that Vitruvius wrote. And Vitruvius, I think he lived during the time of, like 30 AD or something. And he just wrote down essentially what is classical architecture and why do we design things the way we do. And this ended up defining how all the other Michelangelo and Da Vinci and all these people, they referred back to Vitruvius. And Vitruvius had these core principles of beauty, that every building had to accommodate beauty, strength, and utility. And I think that's true of branding, where I think you have all these modern art people who come in and just think, hey, beauty is relative. Therefore, we're going to intentionally glorify the most ugly thing here because it's beautiful in its own subversive way. Let me give you an example. The staircase leading up to the temple always had I can't remember if this is an odd or an even number of steps. I can't do the math in my head, but essentially they wanted whoever steps onto a staircase anywhere in any national monument to end they're traversing the staircase on the same foot that they began it, because it created this sense of balance. Or they designed their stadiums with the acoustics so that the resonant frequencies would be harmonious, not dissonant. They knew how the sound waves would interact with each other when they bounce off back to the viewers. They had these huge copper reflectors. So they're thinking about actual rationale. And I just fundamentally want to be involved in that side of design, of designing actual beautiful things with a purpose, not extreme or ugly things to make some political message or something. It should fundamentally be beautiful. And specifically where that comes into play is when we interview all these we have a whole design fellowship program where we have these young designers at various schools around the US apply, and we filter them into our portfolio. And when I do portfolio reviews, we go through 50 a day. I go through them very quickly. And essentially the first filter is does this look nice? Does this look beautiful? And it seems like a fickle thing, but essentially if you're a UX designer, I don't think it's acceptable for you to ignore visual design entirely, because that's fundamental to the user's experience, is how they feel using your product. Is this delightful? Is this beautiful? Am I enjoying my time here? And so we have UX designers who apply that's here's all the Post-it notes I wrote while interviewing people. And it's good job, but the end product looks hideous, I think fundamentally those are the conclusions I'm comfortable living in. I understand in later stage companies where you're trying to move the needle of revenue and so forth and build a bigger business and do different complex things, maybe doing those 6-month long deep design exercises is more important. But in the world I live in launching new companies from scratch, we just need to move super fast and make sure it looks super good.
Yeah. And I think, again, what you just added on top of looks super good is that it's effective though, right? And it's fit for purpose. Needs to fit the job, which I think was, I don't know, what you just shared about Vitruvius was very interesting, I think, in the way that you take that as inspiration. Is there any other advice that you would give kind of a highly technical founder, somebody in the portfolio who's thinking about and or skeptical about design?
Yes, I've seen it happen a few times where a highly technical founder will initially it'll seem like they really prioritize design, and when they come to it, they have really strong opinions in how the thing should look and feel, and maybe that's generated by some strong reaction they had towards something at some point, or they have a spouse that was a designer at one point. And one lesson I've learned is because we're jumping into different companies that do different things, in one day we'll work at a fintech company, defense company, and a biotech company. We'll be doing branding at one and product design at the other. I've really learned to just check my own opinions at the door and try as best as I can to approach a company from a blank slate. Like in our first meeting, a founder will ask me for my opinion about how they should look and where they should be positioned. Like, I don't know. I mean, let's talk. And, what kind of company are you building? And what are other people doing right now? Like, what's the trend of brand right now? And where do you want to place amid that trend? Do you want to ride that wave, or do you want to counteract that wave in some way? I don't have any opinion until I'm required to have one. But in order to generate that opinion, I'm going to do all this research and discovery and talk to, the founders. And so I think advice for highly technical founders would just be to accept that design is important and that you should be well designed, but any opinion on what that design should look like allow yourself time to generate that opinion and allow it to be informed by real data. Kind of like that Vitruvian concept. There's a rationale behind every design decision. It's not just personal taste. Obviously, you do have taste that comes in at some point, but that can really get in the way. It's you can essentially start building a defense company and accept that it should be like Palantir from day one, when it's maybe you should be the anti-Palantir. I don't know. Maybe you should look like Palantir's little brother that looks somewhat like it, but is different in some unique way. I don't know. Let's figure it out together.
Completely agree. Yeah, if you could take some of, not, you're never going to do it completely, but some of the subjectivity out of the process, make sure that it's strategically driven based on who they are as a company, where they're looking to go. 100%.
Yeah. Jason, where this actually is really funny, where this comes in, is my wife is really into interior decoration. She's very design-minded in other spaces. And she will ask me my design opinion about something that's not branding or product design, or has nothing to do with Silicon Valley. And I'll tell her, I don't know. She'll ask me do you like this house or that house? I'm I'm not quite sure. I mean, I need to look more I need to think more about it. I'm okay not having an opinion on design things until I'm required to have one. And that can be frustrating for her sometimes. But at the end of the day, it's helped me in my career to just check all my opinions at the door and then generate them based off of things with real rationale.
I think we'd all be better off with taking that approach sometimes, not all the time. So
yeah,
helpful and brave to do in a personal setting too, like that, I must say.
Yeah. We have very, very nicely designed offices. And thankfully we worked with really talented architects to design those. So I don't get any of the credit, but they've won all kinds of awards. But, even just giving people tours of the offices and them asking about design decisions and stuff. And I'm I actually don't have many opinions here. I think they did a great job, and I would trust whatever future opinions they have, because I couldn't have made this office as beautiful as it is.
I've been there and it's stunning. It's definitely a place I would want to work. If I had to go into an office, that's the office to go to by far.
Yeah.
So
it's pretty cool.
What's kind of on the horizon for AVC's design practice? How are you thinking about taking what you've built and moving forward? What's exciting you?
Well, we're always kind of streamlining our processes internally. I think we've hit a good pace on our build program. So at one point we were working on one or two companies. Now it seems like we're working on three to four at any given time. And we're just trying to build better communication of what is the process here? Are we going to do branding? Are we going to be involved in product? How much of the talent side are we going to handle after we launch your brand? So a lot of founder communication stuff. We are also just ramping up our talent arm quite a bit. We have a whole talent team, and we're focusing a lot more on design talent as a firm, throwing more design events, focusing on our design fellowship, trying to get regular coffees on the books with top designers in each city, and just try to figure out what's going on in their life and what they're interested in. There's really cool natural networks that kind of get built out of that all the best people know all the best people and like to just hang around and drink coffee and shoot the breeze and talk about passion projects and gardens they're watering and so forth. So yeah, that's the focus right now. We have a lot of really cool companies that are launching, some really important ones, some rare disease company that's focusing on saving children's lives, and that insurance one I told you about. We launched 4 defense companies last year, and so I was feeling a little defensed out for a while there. So all this healthcare stuff is really a breath of fresh air, but that's kind of the focus these days.
Sounds great. And I think we're pretty much at time. Is there anything else? Otherwise, you mentioned wanting to bring in more really top level designers, really people at the top of the industry. Where can people learn more about AVC and find you?
Yeah, avc.com is our website. So 8 VC. You can find me on Twitter, or X rather. I think my handle's Bugmango, but Luke Bugbee is my name. LinkedIn as well. Yeah, I think like the general theme I want to leave people with, a big focus of mine is trying to convince top designers that building companies and being the first designer at companies is a worthwhile endeavor. For a while there, you had Meta and Google and places paying designers just an outrageous amount of money. So it's really a hard sell to be like, hey, how about more risk, less liquid, immediate liquid reward, but a lot more fun. And it was kind of a harder sell. These days, I think salaries are kind of smoothing out a little bit, but it's just super fun to build something from scratch. Working with Dino at Saronic, when it's just him telling like, hey, I want to start this company, to a $4 billion valuation in 18 months or so. Like, to have seen that life cycle, and also, the designers that we connected with them, and, the first engineers there, and seeing them like run whole teams, like the momentum is just intoxicating. It's just super fun. Yeah. You can find me on Twitter. I can't promise to post anything super interesting to you. I post everything design and non-design related. I'm kind of a space geek and love philosophy and religion and so forth. But yeah, I really appreciate the conversation.
I love it. No, I really appreciate you joining us. And yeah, thanks so much again.
Awesome. My pleasure. You have a good one, and have fun in San Francisco, Jason.
Thanks. Take care.
All right.